Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another game analysis. This is in my Road to Expert series. This is game number 6. And in this particular tournament, our early fall Swiss, this would be round number 2. I am playing Ben Kearns, and I am with the black pieces. I've played Ben before quite a few times, and he is 1638 as the publishing of this game, and I am 1736. My rating still has not been published yet for this particular tournament, and it will be updated in the next tournament, so that would be in 3 rounds, which is fine. So ratings don't really matter. What we need to do is play a good game of chess. I was super excited to play this game. I'd played Ben twice before, and both times I had the white pieces, so this is the first time I get to play against his London. Now, I didn't know he played a London, or I had forgotten, one or the other. So I was preparing all week for e4, because I didn't know. I knew that he played the London, and that's what I was expecting. And then he played f4. And I was like, oh, he plays the bird. So I was super surprised. I was not expecting the bird whatsoever. But I had familiarity with it because another guy at the club, Ashish Mishra, plays the bird. So I spent about 4 minutes on move 1 for a few reasons. One, I was trying to remember my prep that I had made after knowing that Ashish plays the bird. I was trying to remember what my prep was. And then and I had spent about a minute trying to remember what my best prep was for it. So I was like, well, I can play my best prep. And then the next 3 minutes, I considered playing other things. So I was considering maybe, responding with f5 and then playing, a symmetrical Dutch, which I thought would have been fun. c5 or d5. c5, I played against Ashish and it kind of messed up. And it kind of goes against a few of the principles that I wanted to. So I went with d5. It's the most principled move to play against the Dutch, or the bird, rather, and knight to f3. And here I was kind of struggling to remember my prep, but the first move of my prep, I'm not going to show it all here because I have yet to use it anywhere, but it is bishop to g4. So I didn't remember what that was, and I was struggling with it. So I was like, I'm just going to try to play the most principled moves. And, I went with knights before bishops, so I thought, man, knight to f6 can't be bad. e3, c5, I'm gaining my control of the center. Okay. So far, so good. And I expected bishop b5. It's the first decisive move. I have a French-style structure, and if I want to trade off the pawns, or the light-squared bishops, I'm okay with this, and then I get like a really good French. So I opted for bishop d7. Now, I could have played knight b d7, which is probably a better move, keeping the bishops on. Knight e5, and then playing a6 and asking you, what are you going to do? I didn't do that. I played this way, which is a little bit more favorable for white and draws, but I thought, well, he still has to prove it. Bishop takes d7, and knight b takes d7, and I mark this as equal. I think positionally this is great. I expect this is equalizing at this point. These are the notes I have in there. Not sure if trading off the light squared bishops is ideal for white in the bird or not. I know in the Dutch you want to keep your dark squared bishop, so I would assume in the bird it's the same. You'd like to keep your light squared bishop, but I'm completely unsure. So he played b3. He wants to get the long diagonal. e6 gets the long diagonal. And here I had to think for a while on where I best wanted to place my bishop. And I was considering between whether or not I wanted to fianchetto and challenge his bishop on the long diagonal, or if I wanted to play bishop e7. What I did not consider or I briefly considered but then discarded immediately, which was bishop d6, and is actually the only move that's still yet in the Masters database that's been played. So it's probably a better way to go, is playing bishop d6. So my thought is, well, he probably wants to castle queenside, but it's going to take him a little while to do that. So I thought, well, I'm just going to play a really solid move. There's nothing wrong with this move. Bishop e7 overprotects my knight. It's really guarded now. So now I'm free to move my queen wherever. I could castle queenside. I can castle kingside. I've got flexibility. I'm happy with this. Castles and castles. I thought, well, if he castles kingside, I can castle kingside, and now we're okay. He does have this really nice long diagonal and this forward pawn push, but knowing what I know about the Dutch, he's going to want to play for e4 and then f4. However, when you play black, you don't necessarily have to play for e5 when you're playing against the bird. So I thought he might even go for a stonewall type of structure and kind of lock things down a little bit. But that might have been a really good way to go. I'm not sure. I don't know all of the stuff in the bird. So I know there's some idiosyncrasies with that particular opening, and I'm unfamiliar with them. So I thought, well, after he plays knight e5, I thought that this was kind of dubious because, like, yeah, you can do that. But I thought it was a little bit early. And maybe it's fine, but now you're kind of letting your intentions known, and you still haven't developed all your pieces. So I thought that maybe, like, what are you going to do with this knight? Come out here? It has no future right now. If you come here, it could potentially come out here, and then either go here. But like, it's kind of, it's unprincipled because you're moving another piece in the opening instead of finishing your development. And I feel like I've already caught up in development, and you need to kind of keep pace with that. That's where my head was at during this game. Knight to e5. I thought of a few different things here. Oh, I'm sorry. I played queen to b6. I thought that this was the best move in the position, and I saw some potential discoveries with the weak king on g1 with the weak e pawn. I don't think any of them work, but I think just putting the queen there and expecting some potential things could be a problem, and I feel like it's a real threat that somebody has to deal with. So I think it's pretty good. Even if he wants to trade these off, that's okay. Everything's pretty safe. And I thought, well, worst case scenario, I can start pushing these pawns and we might get some fireworks. But it also could be forgotten about, right? So I thought this was good. I also thought of queen c7, and I thought of this, but I can't take back or anything with the pawn because, now it's like this symmetrical kind of position, but now the weak d file, it will be weak forever. And then I have this, I can come back over here and I have some options. I think this is still another way to go too. I'm not sure exactly which way is best. I marked this as, this was not marked by me as a great move. It was marked by Evan as a great move. And I think it is because of the potential that it has. White's intentions are clear. He wants to play knight d2, knight f3, and go for a stonewall type of formation. And I think that's pretty smart to do. Piling up on the queen side. I've made my particular plans known. I want to push c4. But how are you going to deal with it without playing c4 yourself? Which I expected. I expected this move. And we would get, another potential sequence. There's a few ways to go. Knight c is one, and then d takes, which I think is best. And then we get kind of a scenario like this. and it's a very interesting position to play. And I also saw this, and then kicking the knight out and coming back here, or going back. But then you don't want to go back because now you're still hindering that knight. And now in any of these positions, if you look, you know, the knight is still hasn't been developed. So, all right, he does play knight d2. I play c4, and now I have a real threat. I have two real threats. How are you going to deal with these? It was probably hasty. I probably maybe had something better to do, but I feel like this is challenging to deal with. How do you deal with both of these moves? And this move surprised me. I was not expecting that move. And it's hard to see that move. When you're looking at the position like this and you're calculating, you're sitting here, you're focused, you're like dialed in. It's hard to think when I push this move, what am I leaving behind? And you are now opening these up for their pieces too, not just yours. So you have to be mindful of that. And I will admit I missed this move completely, and I thought, okay, I need to settle down because I shouldn't miss this move, right? I shouldn't miss this move. And I thought, well, okay, now it's time to really think. And don't do anything crazy. And this is move number 12. Now at this point, I am down 14 minutes by the time this move is played. And I thought, okay, well, what do I have? I need to spend some time here, and how can I get out of this? Because now I'm going to probably lose the pawn. And it's still a weakness, I think. But what can I do? And if you haven't found the next move, here it is. Pause the video, try to figure it out for yourself if you haven't. Bishop to c5. I did a little foreshadowing by hovering over the piece if you hadn't caught it. I apologize for that. So I thought, okay, this is pretty good. Bishop takes, queen takes, and I've solved my problems. And I've calculated from this point right here, I calculated pretty deep. And this is exactly how the game played. Bishop takes, queen takes. And here is where I knew the position was, where I had to calculate further and try to really go as deep as I could, because this is going to be the make or break part of the move. And I expected this move, d4. I also saw all the takes, and I thought, okay, well, I've got all my pieces on there. If that happens, we have some mass changes. That's fine. I'm okay with that. But I expected him to lock down the position because it's favoring for knights. Makes sense, right? I expected him to play d4. I thought this was the best move, and if he finds it, I have to figure out how to play from this point on. And I found queen b4. B takes, which I expected. D takes. Rook to b1. He's challenging this knight here. And I found this. Queen to c3. And I saw this all the way back before I played here, which is really crazy. This is a really long line. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves ahead. And I had to see this far. And I had to know that I wasn't going to be greedy or anything trying to get this pawn, but still being able to protect my pawn. And I thought, okay, this is good. I thought this is fine here, because now he has the threat to deal with. And if once he deals with it, which he will, and he'll either play rook f3 or queen f3 or queen e2, I thought any of those moves would be fine. And I thought, okay, as long as I could do that and play b6, I'm good. And that's exactly what happened in the game. So at this point, I am extremely pleased with how I've played. And even though I kind of had some hiccups in the opening with not knowing or having any prep, I had to spend more time in the opening. After playing b6, I've now kind of almost, I'm still down 9 minutes at this point. So I've equalized a little bit of time, or I've gotten some time back, which I felt good about. And Ben spent quite a bit of time trying to come up with a plan on how to proceed. And I think this position kind of had him stuck because he didn't know what to do, because he sat here for 20 plus minutes. Yeah, almost 20 minutes, 15 minutes about. So I now have equalized time, and now I'm actually ahead on the clock by the time he plays his next move, which you can see is this. I expected queen to c1 because I thought that he'd want to try to get my queen out of here as best he could. And I thought this was better. He played rook to h3. I think the idea is he wants to kind of come in for a kingside attack, which is, I believe, a little bit premature, but it's causing threats, right? Like, you have to keep causing threats. So it's really difficult to attack when my knight's here because I'm covering these squares. So bringing your pieces in causes quite a bit of, it's going to take a long time. So how many moves is this going to take? 1, 2, 3, just to get lined up. And that doesn't count or do anything because I have the square covered with my knight. And if this is ever traded off somehow with another knight, I have another knight coming in to protect as well. So even if you have some sort of pawn storm, I think it might be a little bit premature. But I get the idea. It makes sense. It's valid. I can't say I wouldn't try to do the same thing. But I think kind of coming out here and going after the queen might be a little bit better. And then I have some other options with maybe bringing the knight in and moving pieces, starting to maneuver and move pieces over to the king side. Those were some options I thought of. Rook f to d8. Just protecting my knight. I want to bring my knight in here maybe. I also see some tactics potentially against the queen, depending on what could happen. It's more future proofing type of thing, with potentially moving pieces on c3. So after I get my queen out of the way, I always have an escape square. That's one thing I was making sure I always have, is at least one escape square for my queen. So you have to be mindful if your queen's kind of maybe boxed in a little bit. So I'm mindful of that. And a4. And I'll be honest here, I was really confused about this move. Bringing the a-pawn up to break up the queen side when everything is covered, I thought was kind of just a waste of a tempo. I thought better should be trying to maneuver your pieces over to the king side. It's a move. And at this point, I believe I have another long think. Let me take a look. Yeah. After a4, I was really kind of confused by this move. And then I was thinking, well, maybe he's just passing the move back to me because he spent so much time and couldn't really find a better way. And I thought, well, okay, now maybe I need to spend some time here to try to really figure out what to do. And one of my things was I spent 11 minutes thinking here. And I wanted to reroute my D knight to potentially d5 if possible. So I came up with a long-term plan, and I started going towards that. Knight to b8, g4, he's coming with the attack, and I think that this was a decisive mistake. So, can you find the winning move? Pause the video, try to figure it out for yourself, and go from there. So this is what kind of determines the game, this move right here. And I was really happy to find this move, and I feel it's very, very good. And I win a pawn. Rook takes d4, and if he doesn't take the pawn, I'm gonna win the rook. Or if he doesn't take the rook, sorry, I'm gonna win the knight. And if he does take the rook, I'm going to win the rook. So e takes d, queen takes h3. And at this point, I decided it was time to take a little stock of position. And now I'm up a piece with a really solid structure. It's tough to break through, even though his pawns are pretty forward and his king is very loose. I feel as though my position has none, very little, if not no weaknesses whatsoever. I do have a piece that might be a little out of play right now because of my longer term plan of this type of maneuver, but it's easily, solved by coming back into the game and then trading off knights and then moving my knight. So I wasn't too upset about my position. So I feel like black is clearly winning and doing very, very well. He played queen to f3, and I think this was probably his best try. I think you go for the queen trade and try for a knights and rook versus type of endgame. So he only won a pawn. I won a pawn, but I think this was probably the best try. And I thought I had to think for a while here. Move 22. I spent 3 minutes considering the queen trade, and I ultimately thought, well, I'm up a pawn, and my structure is so solid. His king is loose, and his pawns are kind of weak, and the structure is kind of damaged. I feel I'm okay to trade the queens. So I went for that. We get some trades, and I knew this would not be played since it loses another pawn. You don't want to give that up because this would happen. So he's not going to play that. So I'm pretty happy with my calculation here, and I'm pretty happy with, I'm being very objective with my moves and what I think that he's going to do based on what I see and not trying to take the moves for granted. So I've made some improvements to my mindset and my thought process, which is really good. I've been working on it really hard over the last couple of weeks. So at this point, knight to d5, got a really nice outpost, a5, trying to break up the queen side, and I kick his knight. And now I could just take the pawn. That was one option. The knight's trapped though. I saw the knight being trapped if he goes here and makes some other move. That's why I moved the knight to play f6, was to trap the knight. I probably should have given you this as a test, but that's okay. So he played a5 and the knight's trapped. And then now it's just a matter of converting the game. I had the pawn advantage, but now I'm actually up a piece. So we can trade all these all day, and we pick up the knight. And here it's just a matter of trying to convert, which is one of the most difficult things to do in chess. So there's still 20 moves left in the game, but we're already over 20 minutes, and the majority of the analysis is pretty much done at this point. The game's pretty much over, but just to show the conversion, we'll go pretty quick. And I have a lot of notes in here. I put a lot of effort into my analysis on this video. And we're just kind of simply maneuvering, getting my pieces around. And he's doing the right things. He's moving his people. I'm feeling cramped, but he has to do something to force some concessions. And at this point, I feel pretty confident. And that's pretty much the end of the game. Now, there was some other things. White can try to press and play for tricks, which he did, rightfully so, as you should do. But now he dropped an exchange. I'm pretty much just up a piece, a full rook at this point. And now my king is pretty much stopping everything, and I can queen the pawn. So Ben played a really great game. Here is where he resigned. And yeah, I think those key moments were kind of in the opening where I spent a ton of time, and I equalized time, and then it got to the critical points of the game, and Ben had to spend more time trying to solve the problems that were ahead, and I actually gained a little bit of a time advantage for quite a bit. And then the last time entry I have is move 39, where I have 22 minutes and he has 15. So I have about 7 minutes up on him going into, what is a winning end game. So I had time to be able to solve the problems. But Overall, it's a very fun, very instructive game. I was happy I got to play against a bird, and it was very surprising. And he caught me off guard, which made me think quite a bit. So kudos to Ben for such a great game. And that puts me at 2-0 right now for the early fall Swiss tournament. So we are well on our way. So thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It does help me out a lot. It shows me you like this content and you want to see more. Thanks for watching again. And as always, have a great day.